Call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody, tonight. It's nice to see a relatively full council chamber and a couple of peace officers. Thanks, guys. We'll go ahead and move on to the second order of business, which is to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second by, or order, motion by Mary, second by John. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Carried. Move on to approval of the consent agenda, consent calendar. Minutes from last meeting and the payment of bills.
So moved. Second.
Motion by John, second by Blake. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. That brings us to our public hearing on the 2024 2nd Street Northeast Street Utility Improvement Project. We'll go ahead and open that public hearing, and I'll turn it over to you fellows to start us out.
I'd like to introduce Brian Drown with Fulton Mink. He's the project engineer, Second Street project, as well as South Side.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We'll just flip right away to just a short presentation. We'll go through the scope, what the proposed improvements are, some project cost estimates for where we're at this stage of the process, city assessment policy, then touch again just where we're at in the assessment policy or assessment process, and then this is the first of two public hearings that are required as part of the assessment hearing, so our assessment process, and so then public input is authorized as part of this meeting. So here's a kind of a quick rundown of where we're at. A month ago, you approved the preliminary engineers report, and then so March 12th, we're here with the improvement hearing, which, as I said, was the first public hearing. And then this, kind of talking about it in generalities and kind of the process of how assessments are calculated and just kind of order magnitude of costs. After the public hearing tonight, there is a resolution to consider formally ordering the project and the preparation of plans and specifications. If that's passed, then we would be back in 2 weeks with plans ready to bid. We'll be looking for authorization to get bids in April, and assuming everything moves along and prices come in where we think they will, award, I guess that probably there is a little bit in the schedule there, April or May, probably with its location, probably not starting construction ahead of the school still being in session, and then to have the construction completed by the end of July so the school can have their water hooked up, tested, ready, and they can occupy when they're ready to start up next fall. Project scope, so we're on 2nd Street Northeast. The total length of the project, it's about 660 feet of reconstruction from the south property line of property 413, then up on the north end to the north segment there's an 8-inch water line that comes a kind of cross country across the school property, and tapping into that to get added water capacity for the high school. So basically total reconstruction, sewer, water, street, and sidewalk where needed. Just to look through, just kind of a few of the items. The sewer, best we can tell, predates the 1960s. It's clay pipe mains. It is shallow in that area and has been somewhat of a maintenance problem for freezing. Water main, cast iron, and is undersized, so it's 4-inch, doesn't meet fire protection standards, which is a minimum of 6-inch, and then the school needed added capacity. Storm sewer, there's not really much storm sewer in that section of the street, just overland flow up to that, the ditch on the north end. And then streets, some older pavements relative to other areas in town, and then sidewalk on the west side that has just deteriorated. Proposed improvements, replacing the sanitary sewer main in the same location with PVC pipe, and then also adding insulation to hopefully address that freezing issue, and then replace and upgrade the water main to from a 4-inch to an 8-inch, and then from cast iron to a PVC pipe, and then also replacing those sewer and water services to the right-of-way. The plan is to add curb and gutter to the street with overland flow, kind of perpetuating what it's doing now. And then sidewalk, replacing the sidewalk on the west side. And then on the east side, where the school has a relatively new sidewalk, there are a few service connections that'll be impacted. So hoping to just replace as minimal as we can on the east side of what's needed to get those services reconnected. So this just a kind of a plan sheet of the new proposed with again new sidewalk and driveways on the west side. The green is the sewer replacement, blue being the water main, and then those hatched areas on the sidewalk on the east side on the school side. Kind of a little bit of a side for the project. One thing that is going on right now is a lot more awareness of lead water lines. And so cities right now are required to do an inventory to see and find if they have lead within their system. We are, as part of our funding with the Drinking Water Revolving Fund, there's also separate money for replacement of those. And so I guess if there's any property owners in the audience, one thing that could help us out is if there are lead or galvanized pipes in your house, now would be a time, and some grant funding would be available to instead of stop at the right-of-way, to go all the way to the house. And so that's one thing we need to clean up in the next few weeks, is to identify if that's needed. If it's not, then we don't need to go through that administrative, I guess, exercise to try to access those grant funds. But that's something you'll probably be seeing more of, is that the cities need to inventory where they're at, and then that will lead to down the road plan for replacement. We don't know exactly what that looks like, but if you're doing reconstruction projects, that's probably a very good opportunity to do that. So the next, just the street section, we're really not changing the width of the street, but just adding curb on the edge, just better to promote drainage based from the south to the north. And then again, this just shows the one on the section on the top would be from Pleasant down to the south end of the project with sidewalk on both sides, and then no sidewalk on the school side north of Pleasant. This basically, that last slide in text, 36 foot wide with curb and gutter, 5 foot on the west side, matching the existing, and then again on the east side, it's 8 foot wide, just replacing where impacted, and then one pedestrian, Pleasant and 2nd Street, that'll need to be replaced. There's actually a water service right in that location, so would reconstruct that to meet ADA requirements. Total estimated cost of the project is $650,834, with the estimated assessment cost of $245,481, and the remaining city cost of just over $405,000. have that starred with the accessible amount being just revised from the plan or the report you saw a month ago. And that was just with, a month ago, it had the street assessment at 100%. And so I understand in the past month, you had a discussion with the Public Works Commission and yourself to lower that to 60%. So that's where that, I guess, changes. Also on the funding side, we are on the list with the PFA for the drinking water revolving loan fund for funding for water improvements, and then also street improvements that we can justify that are impacted by the installation or replacement of the water main. And so out of the 650,000, right now we estimate about 354,000 is eligible for either low interest loan or possible grant through that program. Don't know what that number ultimately will be. I think the city sits pretty favorably from an affordability standpoint to collect some grant. So process with that, it would be get bids, finalize those, submit them, and then at that time they would finalize what they think the city would be relative for loan, low interest loan or grant. So
That would happen as the project's going on?
yeah, so like in a month, so end of April, after we have bids, we'd calculate that out. We're dealing with estimates right now. We'll say real numbers at that point, and then we give real numbers to PFA, and they can come back exactly where we sit at that point. Assessment policy. So there's following the Minnesota Chapter 429 process, and then looking at your Chapter 24 of your ordinance, which lays out your assessment policy. Again, looking at assessing the street, sidewalk, the driveway approach, and then the water and sewer services. So that would be the 5 items to be assessed toward benefiting properties. Again, the policy states 100% of the street based on front footage. That's been, I guess, revised at this point to 60%. Adding a little more detail to that, so the street out of the project cost is estimated to be $170,894, and then taking the total number of front footage along the street, there's 1,194 feet, taking 60% of that. So the accessible cost in that table down below, that 102,536, dividing that out. So for every front footage, we're looking at about $85.88 for the street portion. Sidewalk is on a square foot basis. So assessed at 100%, we estimate the sidewalk would be 56,843 divided by that 3,552 square feet. So $16 per square foot. Kind of the same thing with the driveway. And then the 4-inch sewer services and the water service are on a per each basis just for the piping, and then the different valves or connections that are with the main would be applied to that cost. One thing I think Scott and I are still looking through, and again, if property owners had reconstructed their service on their own since it was installed for whatever reason, obviously we'd want to know that. So we're not trying to assess someone for something they've already, I guess, paid for and done on their own. And so right now this shows replacement of all the sewer and water services. This is just an exhibit of the properties affected, and then has a label of the front footage, which kind of shows how that adds up to a total. So we're looking at the footage of each property, adding them up, dividing out the total cost by the total amount of footage. Lastly, the present schedule. So we're kind of about a third of the way down at the March 12th with having the improvement hearing and then considering the resolution to order the plans and specs. We'll be back at your March 26th meeting if we move forward to approve the plans and specifications, authorize bidding. Would start bidding immediately, have it planned to open bids on April 18th. Possibly award on the 23rd. That might be a pretty quick turnaround, so I think there's still a little bit of a time if we need to bump to another meeting, and if funding doesn't get finalized as quickly as we'd like. So I think there's a little bit of flexibility. Again, construction then by June, July, and then we would know final quantities at that point, final costs, and then we propose to then notice the residents and then have the final assessment there in September. So, assessment payments. So following, this is maybe getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but more just for information for people who haven't had to go through this process. Once they're certified to the county, there is 30 days to pay if a property owner decided to pay them in full, and then there wouldn't be any interest applied. They are certified and then go on next year's taxes. The city has some leeway with the financing of that, with how long you put that term over and the, I guess, interest rate applied to that. And I understand, talking with Gerald, that decision is to be made in the future. And then if someone would want to either make above and beyond the annual payment or pay in full, that would need to just be done by November 15th of each year. So, that is what I had tonight. If there's any questions to be answered.
I have a question, I don't know if it would be for you, Brian, and or Scott, just the part about the residents and their lines, their service lines, about having to determine the lead versus.
Yeah.
So is that a situation that they just have to take it upon themselves to have it looked at and checked it out and let you guys know, or is there a plan to reach out to them? Or?
We sent letters,
Okay.
we got a few responses already.
Awesome.
People are taking pictures of their service line and sending it back. Otherwise, if we don't get a response from everybody, we'll probably go knock on doors.
Yeah.
Just to get there's not too many, so we'll just get the last few.
Sounds good. Yeah, you can go.
Public.
Yes, go ahead.
I just got a question. We're the one that had all the freezing at
Okay.
our house, and most of the pipes go right in the manhole.
Beth, I want to have you come up to the microphone there. Thank you.
I'm Beth Getty, 501 Second Street. We're the house that had all the freezing going on, and we've put out many thousands of dollars, and the pipes go right to the manhole. Is there is it a chance at this time that they could be moved a little bit? Or when you start digging, there's several layers of styrofoam in there.
Okay.
Like 10 to 12 layers. It's a lot. And we haven't had freezing since then, but something to consider. And another thing, our neighbor couldn't be here tonight, but he was wondering if this is a time that he could, it's be 4:35, the freeze residents, if they could get water to his shed in the back. Would that be a time with permits and whatnot that he could be doing that? Or is that not a good time to do it? He was just thinking if the street was all torn up, it might be a good chance.
We could probably facilitate a conversation between
Yes.
him and the
He just asked
contractor.
me
if they
to
wanna do
mention
on
that
the-
tonight.
Yeah, they may want to do it on the side, but they also might not want to do it, but
Mhm.
we can facilitate a conversation anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Is there any other questions from the council?
I guess I have one. It's, regarding the size of the water main, you said that the requirement is 6-inch main? It's required 6-inch main? but
The minimum is-
8-inch main, is there a cost difference between 6 and 8-inch main?
I would say it's pretty nominal. You know, there's a lot of it, you know, maybe $4 or $5 a foot. But with where you're at in your system, being that close to the water tower and I think it's a 6-inch loop in that area is probably undersized. I mean, there's more to go into that than, you know, you're looking at the pressure of your whole system. That generally when we replace mains and unless you're just kind of out on in residential areas, you'd probably want to just do 8-inch at a minimum. That's kind of a standard practice. 4 is undersized, 6 is the minimum, but where you're at in your system, you lose more pressure in a 6-inch than an 8-inch, and I don't have numbers here in front of me to walk through all that, but that.
Well, I guess where I'm going with that is that 6-inch, I mean, I think a lot of the main and staples is probably 4-inch,
Right,
a lot of it,
right.
that's servicing a lot of houses. And it's volume flow, wouldn't it be, versus pressure?
It's both. I mean, you're right. Yep.
So I guess my point would be is that, and I don't even know how it's billed, but 6-inch main would be sufficient for everything but the school. But the homeowners are being billed for the,
They're not. That's a
Additional-
city cost. They're only, the
Okay.
city is paying 100% of the sewer mains and the water
Okay.
mains.
all right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that's also the piece that's part of that whole drinking water funding that we'll find out the grant loan split on.
Okay.
Any other questions from anyone in the public? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing then. We'll move on to the next order of business, which is to consider the approval of Resolution 1935, ordering improvement and preparation of final plans for the 2nd Street Northeast Street and Utility Improvement Project.
Make that motion.
Motion by Roy. Second by Mary. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We'll move on to item number 6. Consider approval of Resolution 1936, loan application to the Minnesota Public Facilities Authority.
So a copy of that resolution is in your packet. This is basically what we would, authorizing us to submit that information to PFA so that they can make that determination. We can draw on that funding that's available.
Any motion?
Make a motion for the approval of resolution 1936.
Motion by John. Is that Blake? Second by Blake. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. All right, move on to item number 7, presentation on the Initiative Foundation. Carl Newbanks, Director of Development.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time tonight. Just wanted to give a quick update on the Initiative Foundation's activities and our impact here in your area. And I thought I might start by just gauging everyone's knowledge of the foundation. If you're feel like you have a good understanding of who we are, what we do, or a little less, that'll help me know how much information to launch into at the beginning here. So do we feel like we've got a good knowledge or a little less? Some of us good, some of us a little less. Okay, great. Well, that's great. I'll jump into a little background here just so we all can have some context. The Initiative Foundation was started in 1986 by a collection of rural Minnesota leaders and community folks. The McKnight Foundation spent about 2 years traveling around the region, gathering community stakeholders, and kind of looking for what are the challenges in rural Minnesota and what might a great solution be. And part of the solution that they decided on was to seed 6 regional Minnesota Initiative Foundations to drive economic and community development in specific regions across rural Minnesota. And so I work for the Initiative Foundation, which used to be called the Central Minnesota Initiative Foundation, but long before I got there, someone decided to drop Central. So we're just the Initiative Foundation, but you can see on your sheet there for Todd County, the 14 counties that we serve are kind of grayed out in the middle of Minnesota there. So from Stearns all the way up to Cass, kind of back down to Mille Lacs, and then all the way over to Wisconsin. We serve about 166 cities in those 14 counties in the region. Each Minnesota Initiative Foundation is unique to itself. We each have our own governing trustees. We're all autonomous, but sister organizations as well. So we share a lot of resources and learn from each other. But each Initiative Foundation has also adapted to serve the unique needs of its region. The needs of Central Minnesota are quite different from the needs of Southwestern Minnesota. The geography is different, the communities are different. So we've kind of adapted to serve the needs of our region. And so some of the things that the Initiative Foundation has adapted over the years is, of course, we are a grant maker. We make many grants across the region. We have our own innovation fund that awards grants. We have about 140 charitable funds that we host, donor advised funds, field of interest funds, community foundations, education foundation funds, all those providing grants across our 14 counties. So we do quite a bit of grant making every year in the region. We're also a lender. We have a revolving loan fund. Primarily, we do gap financing. We don't want to or like to compete with financial institutions, and instead we partner with them. I always like to just explain that as banks like to come to us and say, we've got this project. It's in a rural community. It's a great project. It's going to be great for this community. But for reason X, Y, or Z, the bank is uncertain about financing the whole project. So then they'll come to the Initiative Foundation and say, would the foundation be willing to come in, fill the gap, take a second position, whatever it might be, so we can move this project forward in this rural community. That's primarily how our gap lending functions. We've been doing that for many years. We are a community development financial institution with the Department of Treasury. So we often go to the Department of Treasury and write grants and receive grant funding that goes into our loan fund and then gets put out into the communities. They also will backfill some of that with loan loss reserves, et cetera. So it helps us be flexible, nimble, and even aggressive in our lending to fund projects that maybe normally wouldn't happen across the region. And I can get into some of those numbers specifically here as well. So aside from those two things that are pretty standard economic community development pieces of work, we also run programming as well. So we'll spool up and fund programming as needs arise and fall across the region. We always say we want to help community identified solutions get their next feet. Our headquarters is in Little Falls, but we don't sit in some ivory tower there and get the solutions and then tell everybody, this is what you should do. We prefer to hear from community stakeholders, help them identify solutions, and then say, how can we put funding behind those community identified solutions? Currently, some of the initiatives we're working on, one of the big ones is access to affordable childcare. We hear from lots of communities across the region that this is a barrier to workforce retention. It's a barrier to attracting a good workforce. Some communities have no available childcare slots. And when people want to relocate or look for jobs there, they find out the wait a year, 2 years, before the childcare slot will be open. That makes it hard for people to move to your city, right, and build your population. So we're helping cities address that. Staples has been involved in some of that work. The initiative that we've been doing right now is basically coming into communities, gathering the stakeholders, helping folks decide this is the challenge and this is the solution we want in our community. Some communities have said we want one big center. That's our solution, a big childcare center. Other communities have said we want a bunch of in-home providers. That's what suits our our community. And then we help them put those next steps and kind of figure out how they move those solutions forward. Another community we had identified the need for insurance as a big need for their childcare providers. So how can we help them pool together to pay insurance or whatever? So we work with communities to move these solutions forward. It's challenging work. It's been a difficult program for us, but we're starting to see movement and fruit, and we're hoping to see more funding from DEED and the Department of Education for that. And we're hopeful that DEED will be providing grant money to the Initiative Foundation to actually fund capital projects for childcare centers. So folks need to put in a ramp or a few more stairs or whatever it might be, and they can open up, additional slots. So we're hoping to be able to fund some of those projects this year as well. And I say waiting for DEED to kind of give us the final word, but we kind of have the nod and we hope it's coming. So we hope to see those funds available in the next few months. We're also working to build the capacity of our nonprofits. We've done this for many years. We have an excellent nonprofit academy program. The goal is to help nonprofit leaders come and receive training in terms of fundraising or governance or whatever it might be. We've had a great program working with nonprofits to go through a fundraising school where they get access to professional fundraising, software programs and donor tracking and how to write good appeals and how to make sure you're tax compliant and sending out the right thank yous and all that. It's been a great program over the years. Hundreds of nonprofits have gone through it, many, many leaders. So that's been a great program that we've been involved in. We're also currently dipping our toes into some clean energy work as well. We're really looking to find places where there's economic opportunity in rural Minnesota related to clean energy. We feel like folks would definitely raise a hand if they said, not only is that a clean energy solution, but there's good economics in that for me. I see that as an opportunity to move forward. Those are the kind of solutions we're looking for, and we receive funding from McKnight and several other larger foundations, and we're just kind of dipping our toes in that water and gathering community stakeholders and trying to discern what some of those next steps are as well. I could go on and on down the list. There's lots of smaller initiatives that we're involved in and ways we're helping the community, but I wouldn't want to take up too much time. But in a nutshell, that's the kind of organization that we've evolved to be and to serve our region here in central Minnesota. You have what we call the county fact sheet in front of you, and I'll just walk through a few numbers and then I will get out of your hair tonight. But we like to measure some of our impact in terms of what we've collected from within a county and what we've been able to return. So since 1986, and my numbers are county, they only go down to the county level here, but I do have some staple specific numbers in a minute. But we've collected about 2.4 million in contributions and have been able to return 6 million back in the form of loans and grants and scholarships into the county. And I should say it's just a simple ROI calculation for us. It doesn't include our staff time, our mileage, any of that. It's just what we've received and what we put back in terms of grants, loans, and scholarships. So if you drop down just below that, you can see for every dollar we collect in this area, we actually multiply it into $2.50 of impact. This is a real sweet spot for us. We feel like we're very good at going outside the region and collecting dollars, and then deploying them back here in the region. And this is one of the places where support from our cities and our counties really play into our work. About a year ago, the Wells Fargo Foundation approached us and said, we'd like to give you $1.8 million for emergency business relief loans, kind of right at the end of all that pandemic work. And I wrote back to them and I said, I just don't feel like businesses want more loans. I think people have all the loans they need, but we'd love to use your money for emergency business relief grants. We'd sure like to give it away. And they said, well, okay, but can you demonstrate that you have broad regional support for that work? So I sent back to them a list of 14 counties and about 106 cities and about 85 donors and all these folks that give every year to support our work. And I said, I think people that write checks every year, this is a great demonstration of support for the work we do. And so they sent me back an email just a couple days later and said, great, you'll have a check for $1.8 million. Please deploy it as emergency business relief grants to businesses in your region. And so we deployed every penny of that, I think $10,000 and $15,000 grants to businesses across the region. We've replicated that with other foundations and other funders, state and federal funders. So contributions from cities not only get, turned into direct program impact, but also is a measure of support that we often leverage to convince other donors to fund our work as well. Quickly, down at the bottom, you can see here, since 1986, about $3 million in grants, 612 grants total, about 92,000 in scholarships. Again, our lending work here in the area totals about 1.9 million, 67 loans. All that turns into about 900 quality jobs, leverages 8.9 million in outside capital. So lots of really good work, and we're very proud of that work. That last line there is my reference to those charitable funds that we host that do grant making specifically right here in your area. The back of that is just a few more highlights and information that I won't really get into today, but just before I close, I could tell you that in total, when I ran a search through our system and said, show me every grant that references the city of Staples since 1986, and I have to admit, a lot of them I noticed came up Staples Motley, which I think is pretty common up in this area. But every grant that I could find that referenced Staples since 1986, 305 grants for about $1.2 million. And specifically, if I tried to dig a little deeper, but 2021 to 2023, about 87,000 in grants here in the area. Looks like about 30 grants for 87,000. A lot of those are those emergency relief grants. A lot of that deed money, and I mentioned that Wells Fargo money was still kind of flowing through. So kind of inflated numbers for that year, but still some real specific impact here. You do have the Staples Motley Community Foundation. That is a fund that we host. Since 1986, they've done a little over $500,000 in grant making in the area. And you have another charitable fund that does a lot of grants specifically here in Staples, and they've done about right around $40,000 in grant making since they were started, I think about 8 years ago. And lending, again, when I search in our system for every loan that references Staples, it looks like about 35 loans in Staples for about $1 million in lending since 1986. I think a couple loans current as well. I didn't see any loans in the system that were real recent, which is something I always like to highlight. Many times I find lenders, banks, and they say, never heard of you. Didn't even know we could come down for gap financing. We had this great project. Always encourage people to share the word. I always just encourage people to say, call the Initiative Foundation. Don't ever hesitate to call. If there's a project, something that needs funding, especially if it's something we can loan to, don't ever hesitate to call. We hate to hear about it on the back end, and people say, man, we would have loved to have had you be involved in that project. But again, so just have people call us. We'd love to get involved when we can. I would leave it there. Hopefully that's not too much of a whirlwind of information. Happy to take any questions if anybody has questions for me.
It'll be good to let all of our lending institutions and Staples, if they don't know about you, to let them know about you.
Yeah, for sure.
they do already, but-
Yeah, I'm always shocked when I feel like I say that all the time. I feel like everybody knows about us, and then I'll bump into someone and they'll say, never heard of, or maybe they're a new lender, someone that just, new to the work, and they just didn't know that they could reach out. We're happy to be involved.
So there's 6 regions, is that what you said?
Correct.
And each of those regions has a staff, like yourself and the staff, each of those regions have staff that are working on trying to get donors and then funds, either state funds to bring into their region.
Right.
They're all sort of working, but they all also work together.
Correct.
Okay, so they all work together, but they're also working individually to service their own region based on their individual needs.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, there are some things that are statewide, needs, and so we collaborate on those together. Others are real specific to our region, and so we're working on those, and other myths may not, but yeah.
You can always ask, say no, right?
For sure. Yeah. Well, we hate to say no, but we love to say, we can't do that, but let's find who can. Or maybe we can connect folks to another funder or, another opportunity. So yeah, we'd love to be part of it.
Anybody else have any questions for Carl? Thank you very much
Great.
for letting us know about everything.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for your support.
That brings us to the next order of business, which is to consider approval of Resolution 1937, accepting donations.
1937 is in your packet, 3 donations going towards the bike rodeo, which I believe is on May 16th. Does that ring a bell? Thursday, the 16th? I believe. Don't quote me.
Don't put it in the calendars yet?
No, we'll let you know for sure. And then just on the resolution, update that date to today, the 12th of March. And I would recommend approval.
We got a motion by Mary and second by Mary Jo. Is there any more discussion on those? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right. That brings us to the next item, which is to consider nominating 2 elected officials to represent at Sourcewell Representative Assembly on April 17th, 2024.
This is an annual request from Sourcewell to nominate a couple of elected officials that would then attend that representative assembly. They combine that with some student awards. So if anybody is interested in taking part in that.
Are we required to speak or say anything of importance?
Speech, John?
Yeah, you're supposed to run it.
I'd be willing to go if no one else is interested.
You and John.
You guys are all good?
Ron?
John?
I'm busy that day.
Do we need a motion on that?
Sure.
That we appoint John and Ron?
Motion by Roy, second by Mary to send John and I to the meeting. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're going. All right.
You didn't even ask where it was.
Well, we figured it was somewhere warm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it says on this sheet.
John was gonna drive anyway, so. All right, let's go on to item number 10. Consider approval of gambling permit for the Sacred Heart Area School. They're gonna conduct a raffle on May 4th and 5th, 2024 at Sacred Heart Area School.
Copy of the application is in your packet, so you're doing a raffle.
I make a motion for that.
Motion by Doug and second by, is that you, Blake? All right, second by Blake. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay. Move on to item number 11. Consider approval of the Lakes Area SWAT Mutual Aid Agreement.
So in your packet is basically a description of the mutual aid agreement. I asked Ryan to come. He's more familiar with, obviously, with the SWAT partnership that we've been involved in. But I think, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, there had previously been a joint powers agreement, but it was determined a mutual aid agreement is the better way to go. So we would recommend approval of that and our continued participation with the SWAT.
So moved.
Motion by Roy, second by Blake. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. That brings us to committee reports, and we'll start with the Staples Economic Development Authority.
Good evening. We met on February 27th. It was a fairly quick meeting, more discussion than topics, I would say. I don't know. But I just want to kind of jump down to some of the main things. That Business View magazine article will be coming out. We've seen a preview, which I can't share yet, but made some modifications. And so we should be able to see that here again in the next week or so. And then that'll be coming out that we can use for promotion and be sent out to all of their readership. We talked about the Prairie View Neighborhood Open House. I hope if any of you were able to make it there. I was unable to, but I had some positive feedback, and currently, just wanted to mention that there are 4 units currently available for sale. Let's see, you guys know about the Valley View plat. Not a whole lot has changed on the Blandon Grant and downtown revitalization, just that no new projects are being accepted, just that the money has been allocated to a variety of different projects, and there's a primary one, which is the self-watering planters for the entire downtown area. Those, I believe, have been delivered, and they will be working on planting flowers and keeping them in the greenhouse so that they can get nice and big before summertime. So we'll have some beautiful flowers out there this year. Small cities, you guys passed the final resolution at the last meeting, which leads us to waiting our period for, what is the public input. It was mailed out to the critical people for feedback on an environmental review. So far, there has been none, and we don't anticipate there to be any, and it's already gone through the state for approval. So preliminarily, we are anticipating a kickoff date where we will host meetings on April 10th in the evening here. Once we have that for sure guarantee that it's a go, we can start promoting it. So the anticipation is we'll start sending out letters to all property owners next week. We just talked a little bit about the progress of the development projects that are happening. I'm not going to dive into them. They're pretty comparable to every other update you've had. Not a whole lot of movement as of yet. But I think this spring you will start to see a lot of stuff jump forward. The next item on the agenda was, or discussion, was my acceptance of a new position at the Todd County Development Corp. I know you've all been informed of that, but I just wanted to, it's on here, and thought I would mention it again. So let's see, SCORE. So here's a new item that's coming up. So if you're not familiar with SCORE, SCORE is an organized group of retired executives, and they use their skills to mentor local businesses in their areas. So there's a group of us exploring that and creating a branch, I want to say is the title that they would use in that structure for the Staples area. And that would be the greater Staples area, primarily Todd and Medina County overall. And so just kind of know that is in the works. We're working on putting together some committees and getting some people through the training. So just kind of a FYI on that. Otherwise, we ate and we were done by 6:11. Any questions?
Questions from anyone? Thanks, Melissa. Brings us to the Public Works Commission.
At our last meeting, we received bids for the Wadena County ARPA project that we were doing in the industrial park. We talked about this last year and approved it. It's extending water and sewer mains on the east and west ends of the industrial park, and it's going north so that when that area eventually develops, we'll be able to attach onto water and sewer mains without digging up the street. The bids came in a little higher than projected, and last year overall, part of the project was an extension of some electric lines too, and so overall we approved a project of about $208,000. The water and sewer portion of the project this year came in at 196, which was quite a bit higher than what it was projected. Instead of scrapping the project, what we'll do is scale back the electric, and we'll continue with the water and sewer as is. We just won't run the electric all the way down. It's easier to do that in bits and pieces as time goes along, and if something developed quickly, we can also install electric lines quickly. So the commission recommended, the bids are attached in the packet here. J&J had the low bid of $196,258. And the commission recommended accepting that bid and going forward with the project. And we're looking for the council to make that motion.
Motion by John, second by Mary to accept the bid. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
We've had some discussions regarding getting diesel generation in town. We were waiting on the results of a feasibility study. The study came in like the Friday before the meeting, so I did not get a chance to put a real good presentation together, but we did have a good conversation about that. I passed on the results of the study to Missouri River so they can complete the rate study and they can show us what impact generation would have on the rates. And, if we did not go, what the rates would be. So we'll probably have more of a presentation next month. And then in 2018, that was even before I got here, a water supply plan was submitted to the DNR, and it would have been approved except for a technicality. However, nobody caught the technicality, nobody caught that it wasn't approved, and then about 2 weeks ago, I got an email from the DNR, and they said that they were missing one little thing. I sent it to them, they approved the plan, now we need to accept it. So it is just a technicality. We've had the water supply plan on the books essentially for almost 6 years. So we're just, the commission recommended approving the plan, and we are asking the council to do the same.
Second.
Motion by Mary, second by Roy to approve the water supply plan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
The last thing is the water node project we've got plans to begin on July 22nd. Letters will be coming out a month before that. If you get a letter and you don't have a water node, would appreciate it if you all responded and signed up so we could get as many to sign up as we can, because eventually it's going to get down there where there's not as many people left, and then we're going to have to do a lot of work to get the last bits of people on, go knocking on doors and things like that. So the more we can get in this next group, the better. And it's going to be 500 nodes. We also will have about 120 water meters replaced too, just replacing old meters just because of doing it in small chunks. And older meters start to slow down their registers, so we want to start replacing some of those. Nobody's aware of when we had our last meter replacements.
Scott, back to the diesel generation, is there any other towns that are doing that?
Yeah. So Missouri River has 61 communities. I believe 19 currently have generation, and 30 communities are in the process of doing studies like we are. So there's a dozen communities that are not doing it out of 61. I think the uncertainty of the electric grid in the future is what's driving this. And then also one thing I failed to mention was there's a payment for Missouri River. They'll pay us a sum, every month just for having the generation. Then they'll also pay us a lump sum to do it. And that lump sum ends up being about $2 million. However, the overall cost of the generation is $10 million.
10 million?
Yeah. So as I,
So what's the purpose of this? I guess I don't quite understand it. What would be the purpose of this? In case they cut the power off on us? or-
right, independence and security. You know, like I said, it's a time where Missouri River will end up, throughout the life of the project, will pay for about 75% of it with the lump sum payment and then the monthly payments. The monthly payments, I can't remember if it was 16,000 or 20,000.
And this is supposedly gonna supply every electric customer that the city of Staples has with electricity, so you can run, grocery stores can run their freezers, I can have every light on in my house and.
Well, no, we'd ask for, you know, like in the polar vortex times where there's not enough supply and the power goes out to a community, you know, no fault, you know, there's nothing that's knocking the power out. They're just cutting things off. This can fire up. We'd certainly ask people to reduce their electricity, but we would also be able to supply the whole town essentially. We'd probably, you know, like the city has facilities where we would probably disconnect the wastewater plant and run that on our own generation, just to save on capacity.
Kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit because we're trying to save the planet here by running electric cars and all this other stuff. And now we're gonna fill up a whole bunch of little, or maybe big towns too, with diesel generators belching smoke all over the place because we got windmills that are iced up and
Yeah.
that just makes me rub my face, I guess. It just does.
Yeah, and
Because I don't understand it.
you're preaching to the choir with that. It confuses a lot of us, especially in the industry. But when they are cutting back fossil fuels, as they do that, the backup is going to have to be fossil fuels, so it can be called on demand.
Has anybody told any of the people in Washington that we're gonna do this? I mean, it just, I don't know. Oh, well. Oh, we'll wait and see, but $10 million seems like a lot of money. For one thing, for a small town, seems like a lot of money.
You take that number and multiply it by, you know, how many communities are looking at the same thing that we are. It is a lot of money, but I think when this whole idea first came up and we decided to pursue the feasibility study, it's, you know, it's in a way an insurance policy because as we've seen in the past, there's no guarantees anymore. 15 years ago, California had rolling blackouts, but, you know, that type of thing, but nobody ever thought it was going to happen all over the country, but it is.
So,
Because of a reliability issue with
because we don't build power plants. And it makes no sense. This is like a 1929 fix to a 2025 problem. And it makes no sense.
Not only are they not being built, they're being retired. So
Exactly.
they're being taken off.
Why don't we all get together and build a nuclear power plant someplace and get ahead, and then we'll sell them people with generators
I wouldn't be much good to have.
some power. This is ridiculous.
It is.
I cannot believe it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Doug, and
Well,
Minnesota is gonna require carbon-free, 100% carbon-free by 2040.
yeah, well,
And
We also talked about if we don't do it, and need to do it, we may not get those funds
well,
Right.
you can't just,
as a backup too. So,
you can't be strong-armed by every little willy that comes up with an idea. I can see these generators sitting around for about 30 years and then somebody will go over and hit the button and it'll go plunk. It'll be stuck and
well, you have
we
to,
have to-
there's requirements that that they'll be called on to run
Yeah.
on a regular basis and
Yeah.
things like that. And it, I mean, I think we're probably getting a little ahead of ourselves right now. You know, like I said, the study came back just a few days before the commission meeting. And I think next month we'll have more of a presentation that
Yeah.
we'll have some of the answers and we can look at the costs, you know.
Hmm.
We'll have something to look at and see.
Okay.
Let's move on to open forum. Anyone need to contribute or want to contribute to the open forum?
I could add to that generator story. I was paper at St. James probably 20 years ago, and they did have some generators built, and I think they used them for like 8 years, just regular maintenance. But then I forgot what their incident was, but something came up and they hadn't run them for like 2 days. They were really happy to have them. So,
Yeah.
that was the problem.
Which also, I'm sorry, it reminds me.
You can ask these guys, they're on the too.
Yeah, yeah. There, one other thing is that we have a one-way feed into town. And so if we lost that, you know, we don't have another way of getting power. So if we did have wind and it took out the transmission coming into town, then we're at the mercy of the transmission coming back up.
How many years has that one-way feed been here?
Since Staples has had their own power, I suppose.
Okay. I was just wondering, I haven't noticed anything like that happening in my 69 years here, but I guess anything's possible.
I think it'll,
Well, with the electric cars and stuff that are gonna have to be plugged in and stuff, the grid is not gonna hold it.
all right, anybody else have anything for open forum? Now move on to city administrators report.
Just a few items. Glad to be back. Can't remember the last council meeting I missed, but I heard Tara got done really fast, so I want me to be gone more often. Yeah, we're gonna be done by 5 after 7 tonight.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, where's your ladder, Gerald?
As we're now rapidly approaching summer, and it felt like summer today, I was just gonna kind of run through a laundry list of some of the projects, and you've heard about these piecemeal, but, we've got that Second Avenue water main, upgrade, down by Napa, that'll be happening. We've got the ARPA Prairie Avenue project, that you approved moving ahead with. Second Street reconstruction project that we had the public hearing on tonight. We're gonna have T-hangars being built out at the airport this summer. Upgrading some of the fuel point of sale system at the airport. Continuing to work our way through the engineering on for 4th Street and some of the South Side projects. Small Cities Grant is going to be kicking off here this spring, and anticipate that that's going to be probably a year and a half long project that we'll be working on. So got lots of things in the works that are going to be happening here this summer. Obviously, our crews are going to have some involvement with the new cancer center out there, and working with Lakewood and their contractors on that. And so it's going to be a busy summer. Just kind of a capital improvement program. We're going to be working on that and have that to the council in June for discussion on our 5-year capital project going forward. And also citywide cleanup, May 31st, which is a Friday again, 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock. And that'll be going out in the rumor mill and get information out in the paper on that. And just an update, as everybody is aware, Melissa is moving down to the Todd County Development Corporation. We have advertised for that, anticipate having applications in by the end of this week. So sometime early next week, I anticipate having that available for review. So we'll see what we get and have a conversation about where we go from here. That's all I have. So there's questions.
that we adjourn.
Second. Motion by Royce, and I'm going to go to adjourn. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All the same sign. Meeting adjourned.